So we're here today at Mercyhurst University, and we are going to talk about tiny forests. So Chris, thanks for spending a little bit of time. As you know, Asbury Woods is celebrating the Year of Trees in 2024. Mm-hmm. And I think when we think of trees, a lot of times people think about trees in their yard or trees along a boulevard or a big forest worth of trees. So tell us a little bit about what this tiny forest here is at Mercyhurst and what it's all about.
So this is a kind of urban forestry that can be where you can put a whole forest into a tiny space, which is why the name tiny forest, where that comes from. Instead of just having green space like a yard, like we're in here, you can actually have a three-dimensional green space. So you've got vertical structure for organisms to live on. The idea is that you actually excavate down before you plant and put in compost and other things in the soil that make kind of a perfect rooting environment for the trees. And then they're able to make connections underground and grow way faster than they would if they were planted by themselves in individual places. So it serves all the same functions as trees in an urban area, but you get like a lot of that in one space.
Okay, so more bang for your buck.
More bang for your buck, yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
But, okay, so we're used to thinking of like when I take a walk through Asbury Woods, and I've walked Asbury Woods with like a forester, and he points out to me, oh, you know, maybe you should take down that tree so the one of the same species next to it can thrive and open up the canopy. And you're kind of doing the opposite here.
Yeah.
Compacting them densely. So what's the science or the difference between the theories of how trees would grow and thrive?
I think what we're doing here, so that's more for growth purposes, like especially if you have hopes of logging that site at some point. But here we're emulating a natural forest.
Okay.
So if you walk out into a real natural forest and look at the seedlings and saplings on the ground there, you'll see they're really dense. Like there's a carpet of them. Mm-hmm. Most of them aren't going to make it, but that is natural for them to be that dense. So if we were to see a patch of forest this size somewhere in a natural area around Erie, it would be that dense with trees. They're going to grow faster because they're growing around each other, and they're going to be healthier. Of course, they're not all going to make it to full size, but that's okay.
Okay.
That's because we're emulating nature that way.
So you're not necessarily hoping to recreate that all of these trees are going to reach their full growth potential that they might in a different setting.
Right.
The goals are different.
Right. We're not planting trees for timber. We're not planting them for any kind of end product. The whole point is just to emulate nature and bring nature to an urban area.
So I remember when I visited a couple months ago and you were telling me about this, and it was the first time I'd ever visited a tiny forest. The sheer diversity of species and the number of trees that are packed into this tiny little area was just really fascinating.
Yeah, so this follows a protocol, the Tiny Forest Protocol, which was started by a Japanese ecologist named Miyawaki. And if you follow that protocol, you dig down when you plant. You only plant native species. Okay. And one of the points for that is, first of all, they're low maintenance because they're adapted to the climate there. Second of all, they attract native insects, which attract native birds. Everything that you might want to attract to increase biodiversity is created by planting native trees there. If we planted a bunch of non-native trees, it might be kind of a sterile environment as far as wildlife goes. Okay. Compared to natives.
So how many trees are planted in this square footage?
We originally planted 640.
That's incredible.
And in a 200 square meter area. And since that time, we still have about 580 left. So we've only had about 10% die so far, which is really, really good.
And you're 2 years in or so? Okay.
Yeah. Normally they expect more like 50% mortality when you plant trees in cities. Mm-hmm. So it's working. Like the connections and the neighborliness of each tree, it's acting like a community, and they're helping support each other. And that's obviously working.
Yeah. So is this something people can come and visit and explore? I mean,
sure.
It's on the campus, right?
Yeah.
Running to East 38th Street.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we located it right here next to 38th Street, because we want it to be a public thing. All tiny forests are intended to be a community endeavor. The other tiny forests that they're putting in the city they're going to be putting in public places like that. So
Okay.
in some cases, schoolyards, maybe abandoned lots that the city owns, rights of way between freeways and neighborhoods. Some tiny forests could be planted up with only fruit and nut trees so that the people that live there could have access to food.
Okay.
And ideally, the people that live around it are helping to take care of it and want to help take care of it because it's an aesthetically pleasing, cool thing to be able to go to.